What if the man who once hunted Christians was chosen to see what no other had seen? And what if his vision was meant to be shared with us all? That man was Paul of Tarsus, once a persecutor, later the greatest apostle of the faith. In a divine vision, his soul was carried beyond the veil of this world. He witnessed judgment with his own eyes. He walked through the splendor of paradise. And at last, he was brought before the throne of God. Yet this was never meant to be only his vision. It was entrusted to him so that every generation, including ours, could hear its warning, its hope, and its promise. What do these revelations mean for us today? And what can they teach us about eternity? Stay with us until the end as we uncover Paul's untold journey. A journey that reminds us of the weight of our choices, the power of mercy, and the hope that reaches beyond the grave. You're about to witness the apocalypse of Paul, brought to life as never before. If this journey moves you, stay with us until the end and support our mission by liking this video and subscribing to Bible Stories Untold TV. Creating these films takes great effort, and your support truly means a lot to us. Let's begin.
What if the man who once hunted Christians was taken to see both heaven and hell with his own eyes? And what if a long-forgotten text claimed to reveal everything he witnessed there? That man was Paul of Tarsus, once called Saul, who went from enemy of the church to one of its greatest apostles. Paul's life changed on the road to Damascus. A light brighter than the sun surrounded him, and he fell to the ground. Then he heard a voice asking, "Saul, why do you persecute me?" Trembling, he answered, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting." Blinded and shaken, Paul understood that the Lord he had fought against was real and alive. In that moment, the persecutor became a messenger, chosen to carry the name of Christ instead of destroying it. Later, in one of his letters, Paul hinted at a mystery too great for words. He wrote that he was caught up to heaven, but gave no details. Centuries later, a manuscript appeared called The Apocalypse of Paul, or Visio Pauli. Discovered in Egypt and copied in many languages, it claimed to reveal what happened in that vision. The text begins with Paul's body still on earth, as if asleep, while his soul was carried away by a radiant angel. But instead of being taken to paradise, Paul was led toward judgment, the threshold before all. Here, Paul entered a vast hall like a courtroom. Angels stood as guards, holding enormous books that contained the record of every person. Other angels held scales, weighing deeds of mercy against deeds of cruelty. Paul understood this was the trial of every soul. From this place, the righteous were sent upward toward paradise, and the wicked were cast downward into hell. In that hall, Paul also heard two very different sounds. From one side came songs of joy, the voices of the righteous entering the way of life. From the other side came cries of despair, the voices of those cast into the way of death. The angel explained that this was the great divide, where destinies separate forever.
I thought I would see heaven first, but here I was, standing in the courtroom of eternity. Every word, every act, even every thought was placed on the scales. My heart sank, for who could endure such a judgment?
The angel who guided him spoke, moving Paul forward.
What you have seen is only the verdict. Now you will see the sentence. The cries of the damned will reach you, and what you behold will test your soul.
The hall of judgment faded into the distance. The songs of joy grew faint, while the cries of despair grew louder. Ahead, a haze of fire rose on the horizon. Paul understood that he would first be taken downward into the depths of hell to witness the punishments of the wicked. Only afterward, when his soul had seen enough, would he be lifted upward to behold the glories of heaven. Paul now stood inside the place of torment. The hall of judgment was gone. Before him stretched a land filled with fire and smoke. The ground was cracked and glowing. The air carried the stench of burning. The cries of the condemned came from every direction, filling the space like a storm that never ends. Paul expected chaos, but what he saw was not disorder. Every punishment was deliberate. The angel told him that hell is not madness. It is justice carried out with precision. The first souls Paul saw were hanging by their tongues. Hooks of fire held them suspended in the air, their bodies swinging in agony. Their faces were twisted with pain, and their voices trembled as they cried for mercy. The angel explained that these were people who had mocked the way of righteousness, who had used their tongues to blaspheme.
Their eyes turned toward me, as if begging for help. I could not move. I thought of how lightly men use their words, never imagining how heavily they might be judged.
The angel led him deeper. The scene changed. Paul saw men and women scorched by flames. They were beaten with fiery whips, their skin burning but never consumed. The angel said these were adulterers, those who had betrayed their vows and destroyed families with their deceit. Paul's spirit trembled. He realized that these were not kings or rulers, but ordinary men and women. Their sins were common, their fate terrible. If even common sins led to such punishments, what would Paul discover as he descended further? The angel led Paul further into the abyss. The cries grew heavier, and the heat pressed like a weight on his spirit. Ahead, he saw a new group of souls, and their torment was unlike the ones before. Men and women were thrown into large cauldrons filled with boiling gold. They screamed as they sank into it, only to rise again, their bodies never consumed. Fiery serpents coiled around them, striking with venom while they struggled in vain. The angel explained that these were the greedy, those who had hoarded wealth and robbed the poor. The very gold they loved now became their torment.
I could not look without trembling. These men had once walked freely, holding their treasures with pride. Now their own greed chained them. I thought of how easily a man can make gold his master.
The angel moved him again, showing another group. Here Paul saw judges and rulers, men of authority who had taken bribes and twisted justice. Their torment was to be beaten by demons with iron rods again and again as crowds of souls looked on.
Those who were given power and chose corruption face a stricter judgment. They oppressed the innocent and favored the wicked. Now they suffer before the eyes of those they once condemned.
Paul's spirit shook even more deeply. These were not unknown sins hidden in darkness, but actions done in public, excused as power, or dismissed as cleverness. Yet here, every hidden motive was exposed, and every false judgment punished. The angel moved Paul deeper into the place of torment. The heat grew stronger, but what struck Paul most was not the fire. It was the sound. All around him, voices rose together. A sea of cries, shouts, and desperate screams. Men and women begged for mercy. Some called on the names of those they once deceived. Others cursed their own choices. The noise was so heavy that Paul felt it pressing against him like a weight.
Their voices tore into me. It was not one or two, but thousands. I covered my ears, but the cries were inside me. I could not escape them.
Paul then saw groups of the damned stretching out their hands toward him, as if he could pull them free. Their eyes were full of despair, their mouths begging for a chance that would never come.
They cry without end because their time is finished. They chose corruption in life, and now corruption consumes them. Their voices will not cease, for this place has no rest.
Paul's heart broke. These were not faceless shadows. They were men and women like him, once alive with choices and families. Now their cries filled eternity. And as he wept, the angel moved him still further. For Paul had not yet seen the deepest torments. If the cries of the damned were already unbearable, what horrors could lie deeper still? Paul wept as the cries of the damned filled his ears. The angel kept leading him deeper, but Paul could no longer hold back his sorrow. He asked if there was any hope for these souls, or if their punishment would truly never end. The angel explained that judgment was final, but told Paul to pray. So he did. With tears and trembling, Paul pleaded with God to show mercy, even in this place. Then the angel revealed something Paul could hardly believe. Because of the prayers of the righteous, God had allowed one day each week when the torment ceased. On the Lord's Day, Sunday, the punishment stopped. Paul looked and saw it with his own eyes. The demons stepped back in silence, their weapons lowered. The flames that had burned so fiercely cooled into piles of ash. Chains slipped loose, and the condemned collapsed to the ground. For the first time since their punishment began, the cries faded into silence, broken only by the sound of weary breathing. Paul realized that prayer was more powerful than he had ever imagined. If it could reach even into hell and pause its torments, then no prayer was ever wasted. Yet the mercy itself carried a cruel twist. The damned knew the silence would not last. They counted the hours, waiting for the moment when the day ended. When it did, the fires would return. The demons would strike again, and their torment would begin without pity. Paul was astonished. He had expected nothing but despair in hell. Yet even here, mercy had found a place. But the angel warned him that deeper still, there would be no pause and no rest. The angel led Paul further still, beyond the place where mercy reached. The silence of rest was left behind, and now the cries returned with greater force. The deeper Paul went, the more he realized that here, no relief would ever come, not for a day, not for a single moment. The angel explained that these were the worst torments, reserved for those who had shed innocent blood, who had led others into ruin, who had mocked the mercy of God in their lives. Their deeds had been cruel, and so their punishment was without pity. Their punishments were without pause. Paul saw men and women swallowed by flames that rose and fell like living waves. They were swallowed by the flames, yet the fire gave them back, forcing them to suffer again and again. Their screams never stopped. He then saw others crushed under heavy weights of stone. Demons pressed the rocks against their bodies until their bones cracked, but they were never destroyed. Each time the stone was lifted, the torment began again. Paul trembled. He thought of the Sunday rest he had just witnessed, and understood now that these souls would never know it. Paul covered his face, unable to bear the sight. The cries of the damned struck him like thunder, and the flames burned into his spirit. The angel told him the descent was complete. There was nothing deeper for him to see here. It was time to leave the depths. And as Paul was lifted out of the darkness, this is a moment for us to pause as well. If you are finding meaning in this journey through the apocalypse of Paul, we invite you to join us at Bible Stories Untold TV. Like this video and subscribe to our channel, so together we can continue uncovering the mysteries and truths hidden in the scriptures. The angel lifted Paul away from the darkness. The flames and smoke fell behind him. The cries of despair faded until they were only a distant murmur. For the first time since his journey began, the air felt light. Ahead lay a land of brightness, clear and peaceful. Paul covered his eyes at the light, then slowly looked again as the first place of paradise opened before him. The air was clear, the ground shone like crystal, and rivers flowed as if made of pure brightness. Trees sparkled as though their leaves were covered with jewels. The weeping of hell was gone. In its place, Paul heard songs of joy, voices rising together in perfect harmony. He saw men and women clothed in garments brighter than the sun. Their faces shone, and their hands were lifted in praise. Children ran and played without fear, their laughter filling the air like music. This, the angel explained, was the beginning of paradise. Here entered the righteous after judgment, those whose faith and lives had been marked by love and mercy. The angel then led Paul further to even greater wonders. The brightness grew stronger, and the songs rose like waves of music surrounding him. Among the multitudes, he saw martyrs, wearing crowns of victory and carrying palms in their hands. The angel said, these were the ones who had given their lives in faithfulness. Their suffering on earth had become their glory in heaven. Paul then saw another place where children gathered. Their faces shone with innocence, and their voices rose in pure song. They had died young, yet here they were alive, safe, and filled with joy. Their laughter echoed through paradise like bells ringing in the air. The angel pointed to another group, ordinary men and women, not rulers or prophets, but people remembered for their kindness and mercy. Some had given food to the hungry, others had cared for the sick or welcomed strangers. No act was forgotten. Paul realized that in this place, nothing was too small. Every act of love was remembered and rewarded. This, the angel explained, was the justice of God. In hell, sins followed people into judgment. In heaven, even the smallest deed of goodness followed them into glory. The angel then brought Paul to another place within paradise, a place of awe and silence. Here he saw great scales, larger than any he had ever imagined. Angels stood on either side, holding the balances steady. On one side were placed the deeds of mercy, and on the other, the deeds of sin. Paul watched as the life of a man was weighed. On the side of mercy, an angel placed acts of kindness, feeding the poor, comforting the grieving, speaking words of encouragement. On the other side, another angel placed a man's careless words, his lies, and his selfish acts. The scales tipped back and forth, and every moment of the man's life was remembered. Nothing was lost, nothing overlooked. The angel explained to Paul that God is not unjust. Even the smallest act of love, even a cup of water given in compassion, was enough to outweigh great sins if it was offered in faith. At the same time, secret sins could drag down a life that seemed outwardly righteous. Paul trembled as he realized what this meant. Nothing in life was hidden. Every choice, every word, every action carried weight in eternity. The angel turned to Paul and said that this was why men must live carefully, not trusting in their own greatness, but in mercy, for the scales never lie. The angel told Paul that his journey was not yet complete. He had seen the depths of torment, and he had seen the joy of paradise. He had watched the scales of judgment weigh the deeds of every soul. But now he would be taken higher still, to the place where all judgment and mercy flow from. Paul felt himself lifted again, rising beyond paradise into a brightness so fierce he could not open his eyes. Voices like rushing waters filled the air, and the sound of countless angels crying, "Holy," shook the heavens. The angel told him he was now before the throne of God. Lightning and fire surrounded it, and a rainbow shone above it like an endless crown. Multitudes of angels stood in ranks, their faces bowed, their voices rising in endless worship. Paul wanted to look, but the light was overwhelming. He fell to his knees, covering his face. The angel said that no man could see God fully and live, but that Paul was being shown a glimpse so that he might testify to what awaits beyond this life. Here, Paul understood the great mystery. All things end before this throne. Every soul, whether righteous or wicked, stands here. Every prayer, every cry, every act of mercy is heard here. This was the center of eternity. Paul wept again, but this time not in sorrow. He was overwhelmed by the holiness and majesty that surrounded him. Knowing he could never fully describe it, yet he would carry the memory for the rest of his life. The angel told him that his vision was complete, and he felt himself pulled back from the brilliance. The voices of the angels faded. The light that had blinded him slowly dimmed, and he was carried past the heights of heaven, past the gates of paradise, past the halls of judgment, until at last he returned to his body. The world around him was the same, yet nothing would ever be the same again. Then Paul understood why God had allowed him to see both hell and heaven. It was not for his sake alone, but so the living would know what awaits beyond death: the justice of hell, the mercy of paradise, and the glory of his throne. The vision was both a warning and a hope, and Paul carried from it 3 lessons that remain for all who hear his story. First, that judgment is real. Words, actions, even thoughts carry weight, and nothing is hidden. Second, that mercy is greater than men imagine. The prayers of the righteous reach even into hell, and the smallest acts of love are remembered forever. Third, that life must be lived with eternity in mind. Wealth, pride, and power fade, but faith, humility, and kindness endure before God's throne. These are not just ancient warnings. They are reminders for every person who walks the earth today. Choose mercy over cruelty, truth over lies, love over selfishness. What seems small now will shine in eternity. Paul's vision ends with a call to live wisely, to live faithfully, and to remember that every life, no matter how ordinary, is being written in the eternal books.
The journey ends here, but the echoes of truth remain. If these stories move your heart, help us keep them alive by liking this video and subscribing to Bible Stories Untold TV. Your support makes every new story possible.